ladies and gentlemen, now hosting the RizzoCast, put your hands together for Steven Risotto!
All right, what is going on, everybody, and welcome. This is episode number 118 of RizzoCast. I'm Steven Risotto, and today we are joined by a very special guest. He played in parts of 16 years at the big league level with the Yankees, Angels, and Giants, and also Red Sox, too. He is a six-time Gold Glove Award-winning first baseman and a member of the Giants Wall of Fame. You see the Gold Gloves there behind him. If you're listening, you don't get that prestige honor, but if you're watching, you could see all the awards behind him. It's JT Snow, and JT joins the show. JT, how you doing? Welcome.
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
So we're recording this on, it's October 14th right now. We're right in the midst of the MLB postseason. Are you keeping up with everything that's kind of going on around the league right now?
I do. I think postseason baseball is my favorite playoff scenario of any of the sports. Baseball is unique in that it's series, right? Your 3-game series of first round. And I like the new format this year. And now we're into the best of 5, and then we'll go to the best of 7. So I love it. I keep up to date. I played for Terry Francona in Boston, who was probably, people ask me who was my favorite manager I ever played for. And even though I only played in Boston for 3 months, I'd put him at the top. He's just such a great guy. We have something in common. We both went to the University of Arizona. He's a little bit ahead of me, but I had a great time there. So, and then I'm friends with Aaron Boone. I've played in golf tournaments with him, and we grew up in the same area in Orange County. He's a little younger than I am, but we played against each other. He was a Pac-10 guy at USC. And then you just go to the different teams, and Dodgers with Dave Roberts, and I played for Dusty, obviously, with the Astros, and Scott Service was a teammate of mine with the Giants for a couple of years. So it's fun to see him and Dusty go at it. So I love the postseason baseball. I watch most of the games. I love to see which guys can relax and produce. It's not always the best player, that it's some unsung hero, and it's the guys that can relax and not make the moment too big. So I love the postseason.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dusty. He's one of your former managers, as you mentioned, and he's arguably got the most stacked Houston team since he's taken over. He's been there a few times, but since he's taken over, this might be his best roster there in Houston. And as someone who kind of played for him and got to know him a little bit personally, I mean, what would it be like just to see him win one? Because I think he has the most wins out of any manager who's not in the Hall of Fame that doesn't have a championship.
Yeah.
So just one for Dusty. How would you like to see that?
Yeah, I think that's all he needs. I think he's got a great chance this year. We came close in 2002 when he was our manager with the Giants. He was with the Cubs and the Reds, but he deserves it. I think he's got a great team. But the thing I like about the Astros is they can hit. And in a day and age now where we've seen batting averages down and not a lot of offense, I think the analytics part has gotten involved a little too much, in my opinion, in that. But if you look at the Astros up and down the lineup, these guys can hit. Alvarez and Bregman and Gurriel and all those guys, they're putting up numbers, hitting 30 homers and driving in 90 to 100. So they're kind of old school. And we've seen it the first 2 games with the Mariners that don't pitch to Alvarez, right? He'll make you pay. So maybe Dusty gets it this year. He definitely deserves one.
Yeah, and Yordan Alvarez is a beast. I mean, I'm glad you brought him up. He's so balanced at the plate. He hits tanks. He hits good pitching, left on left against Robbie Ray in that wild card series to send them to the division series. So he's someone to watch out for sure. Is there anybody else that you're looking for this postseason that kind of, has caught your eye?
Well, I was excited to see how Aaron Judge would do after the year he had. And I was watching the game the other day. He struck out 4 times today against the Guardians. It's hard, he comes in with a lot of pressure on him. And sometimes those guys, I played with Barry Bonds for a lot of years, and he was a guy that struggled in the postseason mightily for a lot of years with the Pirates and the Giants until he kind of figured it out at the end. But I was anxious to see how Judge would do. I'm a National League guy. I'm really in tune to the Dodgers and the Padres series. It's been good so far. And The Dodgers are tough. They're like the Astros. They got guys that hit. They're old school. They can swing the bats, hit homers, drive in runs. But I think in the postseason, it really comes down to starting pitching, how the manager uses the bullpen, and then you got to be able to catch the ball on defense. The teams that catch it on defense and give the other teams 27 outs are going to win. So it's managing the bullpen, catching the ball, and somebody will come along and get a big hit. So I'm excited to watch the Padres and Dodgers tonight. People in San Diego are great fans. It's a great city. I know they're going to be excited to Petco tonight.
So if you're a team that, let's say you're a player and a team that doesn't make it to postseason, and you're a player on that team, are you still flipping the TV on in October, or are you completely checked out at this point? 162 games is a long time. Maybe it's a good rest for you. What are you doing if you're not in postseason?
I think guys probably peek at the TV and watch, and they're probably interested in what's going on. A lot of guys have played with other teams, right? Have been traded or signed as free agents that maybe have played with one of these playoff teams. So, after the season, guys take vacations, get away from it. But I think wherever you're at, you kind of, and with all the media nowadays that we have, our cell phones and et cetera, we have quick access to check on the games and follow it. So I like to follow it. I'm a fan of baseball. Even when I played and was out of the postseason, I like to see who was doing what. So, like I said, it's my favorite postseason of all the sports. I think baseball and hockey are my favorite, because hockey's a lot like baseball, where there's series, you got to win so many games. So yeah, it's fun.
And it's not predetermined either. Like NBA, we know who's going to be in the finals every year. And, these teams, they rest their big stars down the stretch in the NBA. And football, I think, kind of is the same way. Football relies a lot on health. Baseball does too, but baseball's a lot of luck. So I can't wait to watch this postseason. I agree with you. And speaking of not making the postseason, the Giants, they finished 81-81 in 2022 for the first time in franchise history. It's kind of crazy to think that they've never finished at 500 in the season, and they couldn't follow up that 107 win 2021 campaign where it seemed like everything was going right. So as someone who may have watched a few games from afar, I'm sure you have, and is somewhat connected to the organization, how would you kind of assess this kind of year that they just had?
Well, I think coming off last year, it was a huge disappointment. I think that but every year is different. Players are not robots. Sometimes you have good years, and next year you come back and something's off. You can't figure it out. I do watch a lot of the Giants games. I keep involved with what they're doing a little bit. And to me, I think the two things that stood out this year were the offense and the defense. They had pretty decent pitching. I think they were near the bottom of the National League and the MLB in defense. Crawford's still doing his thing, but you saw a lot of mistakes on a nightly basis, a lot of errors. And then offensively, there just didn't seem to be a steady lineup. I think when you look at these teams in the playoffs, they go with their lineup. They've got a leadoff guy. They've got a number 3 hitter. They've got a cleanup hitter that protects the 3 hitter. And every night with the Giants lineup, it was something different. And I know they have the most coaches in the MLB in their dugout. I know they're heavily into analytics, which I'm not a huge fan of all the analytics. I think some of it's good, but it can get in the way. But I know when we played, a lot of it depends on when I was playing. I didn't even look at the lineup when I went into the clubhouse that night. I knew I was hitting 5th or 6th. Sometimes I might be bumped up to 3rd. I knew he was hitting behind me to give me protection. And I just didn't see that with the Giants lineup. It was just a rotating. A guy's hitting a leadoff one night, and then he's hitting 4th, and then that's really hard on players. And I think you don't get into a rhythm. So I think that was the biggest thing was the offense, and they need they need run producers. They need guys that drive in 90, 100. They need to get the batting averages up over. Nowadays guys are hitting 230 and 240, and so I at times I kind of questioned what was going on with the lineup and where guys were hitting.
Yeah, it was a little bit different, and they did a lot of the same things that they did in 2021, but they weren't all healthy. And one thing you mentioned about the defense is that it wasn't just anything you could just look at in the box score. There were nights where I would leave the ballpark and I would go, God, that guy has no range at second base, or, that was a slowly hit ball that he couldn't get to, and it would be the little things, or the outfielders, threw to the wrong base and a guy could have been thrown out at the plate, but he scored. And I guess we'll have to see how that gets cleaned up. I think it gets addressed by getting younger and more athletic. And speaking of how it gets addressed, there's one big name that's surrounding this Giants offseason, and I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. Aaron Judge, obviously, with the 62 home runs and, breaking the American League record. And everybody's like, oh, the Giants are going to go and spend and throw 10 years and $350 million at him. Is that something you see happening, or do you see the Giants front office kind of going more towards the path of adding 5 or 6 pieces to their offense and their bullpen maybe? Where do you see them going this offseason?
I don't think they'll sign Judge. I don't think one guy could. Baseball's a lineup with 9 guys now with the DH and the pitcher not hitting. One guy is going to hit 4 times during a game. Oracle Park is not the friendliest hitters ballpark. I haven't played there. I played there 6 years, and you lose a lot of home runs on a nightly basis. It's cold. It's windy. You're wearing sleeves. The Yankees would be crazy to let Judge go. Judge hits in a great ballpark, short right field. He can take the ball out anywhere in that stadium. He's not going to be able to take it out anywhere at Oracle Park. So I think all the talk, I know he grew up a Giants fan and a Barry Bonds and Rich Aureli fan, but I don't see it happening. If I was spending the money, I would go get myself 3-4 solid young players, develop them, not even develop them, just let them play, put them in the lineup every night. The game has gotten so, with the analytics, righty versus lefty, lefty versus righty, that guys are in the lineup one night, they're out of the lineup the next night. We used to just play. We were, I'd get a night off against a tough lefty, a Randy Johnson or somebody like that. But you got to let guys play. You got to let them get their rhythm. And some nights you're going to go 0 for 3 or 0 for 4, but you might have good at bats, and that'll carry into the next day. So I've always said, give me on a baseball team, give me 6 or 7 really good players. If you're grading them 1 to 10. Give me 6 or 7 guys that are 7 or 8s instead of one guy that's a 10 and a bunch of guys that are 6 and 5s, and we'll beat you. And we all know at Oracle, pitching is huge, so you got to have a great starting pitching staff. I think Rodon might be gone. So, anyways, I don't see Aaron Judge in a Giants uniform next year. Sorry.
Yeah, all the fans are throwing their phones right now and listening to this. No, and I get it. I get that it seems like you're not a big launch angle or exit velocity guy, but would you have used any of the other information that's kind of been infiltrated into the game? So, like, say for example, pregame you get a report that, oh, this guy's throwing 70% changeup, and this guy's throwing 30% slider. What kind of information would you use if you had played today, and how would you kind of learn to filter that? Because once the game starts, it's kind of hard to remember everything. I don't know how these guys do it.
See, when we played, we knew what launch angle was, and we knew if we were hitting balls that were carrying to the warning track, then you knew, hey, I just got to get the back underside of the ball a little more. Maybe I change my swing, my launch angle. Maybe I can lift a little bit. We knew all that stuff when we played. It just wasn't pushed in front of us. And we knew when we hit a ball hard, we didn't know our exit velocity, but heck, I'll take 2 hits and leave the bat at 80 miles an hour instead of 3 at bats where they're outs, at 100 miles an hour. So I think things get, and I wasn't a big data guy. Early on, I got involved with a little bit of, oh, this guy throws this percent of fastballs and this count or change ups. Then you go into the game with too much information. I want to know, what pitches does he throw? Okay, he throws a fastball, he cuts it or he sinks it. He throws a curveball and a changeup, maybe a slider. But I was picky to what I wanted to do at the plate, where I was looking for the ball. I was a low ball hitter, so I try to attack the zone down, whether it was a fastball, changeup, any ball down in the zone I'm swinging at. Never want to get beat with 2 strikes on a fastball inside. You see it all the time nowadays. Guys are taking strike 3s. Never did we want to get beat with a fastball inside. And you have to know the book on yourself and how teams pitch you. When I played, teams would start me out away and then they'd pound me in hard late in the count. And I knew that. I think the pitchers, taking nothing away from the guys nowadays, We're seeing a lot of guys throw 100 miles an hour, but I think when I played, the pitchers could locate just a little bit better. There wasn't quite that velocity. But nowadays, guys are throwing as hard as they can, as long as they can. I don't know if that's the best solution. We had guys that could locate, and guys would sink it and cut it, whether it was 91 or 88 or 95. So you had to be ready for location. And nowadays, I think guys are more or less throwing. They're trying to light up the radar gun, and that can backfire sometimes. So, not that one generation is better than the other, but the game has changed, and there's a lot of information nowadays. And I think sometimes a guy might be cruising along, and then somebody puts something in front of their face saying, "Hey, when you do this, you have better results." And then the guy tries it, and maybe it doesn't work, and now they're kind of lost. They don't know. Well, I was successful doing it this way, but now I'm trying it this way because that's what the numbers say. And now I'm kind of back to square one. When you got to go with your strengths, know who you are, and just keep repeating it and getting better at it. And whether it's a hitter controlling your strike zone or pitcher controlling your strike zone, that's the beauty of baseball.
Yeah, maybe there's a little bit more throwing than pitching nowadays. And one thing that I want to know is that, I've seen it so many times where, we see the launch angle swing, and, Cody Bellinger, for example, against Camilo Doval last year's postseason in the 2021 division series. Doval, obviously a big flamethrower. He was throwing sliders down and in the Bellinger. And I think everybody was like, what's going on? That's going right into his swing path.
Right.
And I was thinking in my mind, I was like, with the way that these guys are trying to keep the ball in the air and off the ground, because like the method is, and I hear it all the time, ground balls don't pay. And OPS, you want to hit the ball over everything. And I keep thinking to myself, why don't pitchers attack up in the zone with the fastball more? Like, we don't see it enough. Instead, we see, maybe sliders down in the lefties, which in my mind makes no sense. What do you think about maybe the lack of high fastballs today? That's something that just came to mind.
Yeah, I think that so when I was playing, if the pitcher would look at the way the guy stood at the plate, right? If you carried your hands high, you probably wanted the ball down in the zone. And so you would pitch a guy up in the zone with high hands. If a guy held his hands low, then you pitched him up in the zone. So it's whatever the opposite is, because if his hands are low, he probably wants the ball down low. So that was one thing pitchers did. And I remember facing guys like Greg Maddux and Kurt Schilling and Tom Glavine and all those guys. They would look at where you stood in the box, how you held your hands, what your stance was like. Are you going to crouch? Are you standing straight up? Are you on your backside a lot? Do you have a leg kick? And they're trying to disrupt your timing. Pitchers didn't throw a lot of sliders, right-handers to left-handers back in the day, because that would break into your barrel. And if you're a low ball hitter, I've never understood. You watch a lot of these games, it's just constantly fly balls after fly balls or pop-ups. When you hit a hard ground ball, three things have to happen. The guy's got to field it, he's got to throw it, and the guy on the other end's got to catch it. When you hit a fly ball, one thing happens, the guy's got to catch it. And big league outfielders and infielders are too good. They're not going to drop a lot of fly balls. So I still believe that hard contact, line drives, hard ground balls, and just the fly balls you're seeing, it goes back to my point earlier about guys' batting averages and production. You're seeing guys with 25 home runs and 68 RBIs. That didn't happen back in the day. One year I had 19 homers and 96 RBIs. One year I had 15 homers and 80, and one year I had 24 homers and 104. So we knew how to drive in runs, and we did it with line drives, a man on third and less than 2 out. We hit a hard ground ball to the infield, score the run. Man on third infield, we hit a fly ball to the outfield, score the run. And for me as a hitter, it's frustrating nowadays to see guys with 30 home runs and 80 RBIs. Back in the day, guys were 30 home runs and 120. So that's just the way the game changed. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. If somebody approached me, I was a line drive gap guy with occasional power, and if they're wanting to hit more fly balls, I think I would resist it and probably have a little argument with them, but that's not who I am, So, but guys keep doing it, and that's just the way the game is nowadays.
All right. Well, let's get into your career a little bit. Your dad, Jack Snow, played 10 years as a wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams back in the 60s and 70s. And I mean, that's a pretty extensive athletic background that you're coming from. And I imagine he pushed you in some ways. What was his impact on your life like as a kid growing up?
It was huge. And the one thing I will say to you that he never pushed me in anything. And I think you see that a lot of times with professional athletes, and a lot of their sons end up making it because the dads know how hard it is, the sacrifice, the commitment, so that you don't push your son, because to expect them to be a professional athlete is pretty unfair. My dad never pushed me. He introduced me to all the sports. I was a lucky kid growing up, going to the Coliseum on Sundays and watching my dad play football. He retired, I was like 8 years old. So I remember a few good years in there, and I thought it was pretty cool, and thought, something that maybe I want to do someday. And I got to hang out in the locker room and meet the players and get on the sidelines every now and then, go to practice. So yeah, I just love sports growing up. I played football, basketball, baseball. I played soccer growing up. They all benefited the other sport. Nowadays, it's tough for me to look at kids and they're playing baseball travel ball for 10 months of the year and they're just getting burned out. I wish they wouldn't do that, but he was a big influence. When I got into high school and started having some success, he was teaching me some things, and work ethic, and how to put the work in and stay after it and do a little extra than everybody else. He was always big on the mental side of the game. I think that's one of the strengths I had when I played, was through ups and downs, I stayed mentally strong, and he was always big on that. The first thing he would always ask me when he would call or check in when I was in the big leagues or coming up through the minor leagues, or even in college, playing at the University of Arizona and having some struggles, he would always say, "How you doing mentally?" I'd be like, "Well, I'm down. I'm second guessing myself, on my confidence," and he would always work with me on that and just believe in yourself. And so, yeah, it was fun. And my dad was a pretty good high school baseball player growing up in Long Beach, California. And he chose to go play football, played at Notre Dame, and like you said, played for the Rams. I think he played for 11 years, 65 to 76. And then when I got to the big leagues, he was my biggest fan. And it was fun for me to bring him to the ballpark and come in the clubhouse. And he was so nervous watching me play. Even the couple of playoff series we were in, and in the World Series, he was a nervous wreck. So, but it was fun. It was a great childhood. Yeah, and we lost him a few years ago, so I miss him every day. But he was my biggest fan and my biggest influence.
You said a few things there that stuck out. You mentioned that kids are playing baseball year round, which I've seen. You played 3 sports in high school. You're the quarterback your senior year, you're point guard basketball, played baseball. Is like the 3-sport athlete dead? Or even the 2-sport athlete you don't really see a lot of? Because this is on the side here, this is side rant, but I think a lot of high school coaches like despise the fact that, a basketball coach can't stand the fact that maybe, somebody's playing baseball in his program. Like he needs them for basketball, so it's stuff like that happens. And there's a lot of peer pressure going into it. But what happened to the multi-sport athlete? I feel like it's gone out the window.
I think you're right. It has. And, I was lucky in high school to have my dad on my side, because I had coaches pulling me one way or the other, summer camps and this and that. My dad just went up to the coaches and said, "Listen, my kid's going to play all 3 sports. He can help you in all of them. Like when football's over, then he'll join the basketball team. When basketball's over, he'll come out for baseball. And then in the summer, he'll partake in the camps that will divvy him up a third. And so I was lucky to have my dad, and the coaches didn't really argue, because my dad knew what he was talking about, because he'd been at the highest level. I think some of the kids nowadays, their parents probably get intimidated. The coaches probably intimidate them, and they're putting all their eggs in one basket. So I wouldn't change it for the world. Football taught me about toughness and showing up and being a part, of an offense and a defense. Basketball was about great footwork and conditioning, and baseball was totally separate than all of them, right? You're by yourself out there hitting, or in the field, and it's 4 at bats a game. So they're all different, but they all ended up. And the one interesting thing was when I went to the University of Arizona, our coaches there, they had a philosophy that they tried to recruit kids that play multiple sports, because once they got to baseball, they were going to get better just playing the sport full time. And that's what happened with me is when I went to the University of Arizona, I was pretty raw, pretty green, 3-sport athlete. And then when I just started playing baseball only, I got better and better each year. I really got into it. I wasn't burned out. And I got drafted by the Yankees, went into their minor league system and climbed the ladder, rookie ball, single A, double A, triple A, did the whole thing. And it worked out. So show me a kid that's a good athlete that can play more than one sport. And I'll show you somebody that when he gets in that one sport down the line, he's going to get better and better.
Yeah, and your guy Kenny Lofton, another example of a really good basketball player at Arizona. So, yeah, no, definitely. And you mentioned, obviously drafted by the Yankees in '89, debuted in '92, and then traded after that season to the Angels, where that's home. You're going back to SoCal. Yeah. I mean, was that the best case scenario for you going back to California? Because I mean, you were blocked by a pretty good first baseman in New York at that time, or was going home something that maybe you had dreaded? Because I know a lot of guys can't deal with going home.
At first, I thought it was great because, like you said, I was blocked by Don Mattingly in the Yankees organization. I was in AAA and had my best year. Played in Columbus and was the International League MVP. I won a batting title, was voted best defensive first baseman in the league. And then here I am stuck behind Don Mattingly, who in my mind should be in the Hall of Fame for all the stuff he did. I have different views of the Hall of Fame than we vote on now, but that's why you have an agent. My agent went to work for me and we worked a trade to the Angels. And at the time I thought it was great. And then when I went back, it was probably the hardest thing and not the best thing for me because I grew up 20 minutes from Anaheim Stadium. And then I was gone for 3 years of college, 4 years in minor leagues. Now I'm back home. And every night at the stadium in the stands with friends, buddies, high school math teacher, catechism teacher knew me from when I was 6 years old. And it really was hard. Took a lot of my time, and I had a hard time saying no to people. And then I struggled, got sent back to AAA, came back. And then the best thing that ever happened to me was getting traded up to the Giants and getting away from my hometown and all the people that I knew and just go up there by myself and work on my game and kind of get away from everybody. So going back to the Angels was hard. At first I thought it was going to be great, which it was, but then a couple trips back to AAA, and then a couple years in the big leagues full time and get traded to the Giants was probably the best thing that happened for me. But it was tough going back home and playing. I think I tell people, if you can go back home at the end of your career when you're already established, maybe you've made a pretty good living and you're pretty secure, go have fun and go back to your hometown. When you're starting off as a young player, it's really hard.
Yeah, no doubt. I'd imagine. And did you grow up an Angel fan or a Dodger fan?
I was early on, I was a Dodger fan because they were always good, right? The 70s. Mm-hmm. I can still reel off their whole team, Garvey at first and Dusty was in left field, Lopes at second, Billy Russell at short, Ron Say, Steve Yeager on the plate. My favorite Dodger was probably Reggie Smith because he was a switch hitting outfielder, but I love Steve Garvey and all those guys. And then as I got older, they were always the Dodgers were always playing the Yankees. It seemed like in the World Series, going up against Reggie Jackson and all those. And then as I got older, my teen years and junior high and high school years, kind of switched over to the Angels because they were closer to home and got to go to more of those games and got to watch guys like Rod Carew when he was with the Angels and Don Baylor. My favorite Angel was Bobby Grich, the second baseman. He was a Long Beach guy that was always getting his uniform dirty and playing hard. My dad always told me, watch Bobby Grich play. He's a Long Beach guy. He's tough. But I was real fortunate because when I came up with the Angels, Rod Carew was my hitting coach in the big league. So I grew up watching. And then when I got to the Giants, Dusty Baker was my manager who I watched. So I was real fortunate. I had a really cool big league experience especially with those two guys who I watched as a kid. And now they're coaching me.
Yeah, it was funny. I was talking to, when I had Joe Madden on, we actually talked about, we had mentioned the Angels and everything. And he had mentioned that, where was I going with that thought? I don't remember.
Somebody that he grew up watching or
no, he was talking. Yeah, that's what it was. He was talking about how he wanted Long Beach guys. So something brought up Evan Longoria, right? And something brought up Longoria, and he was like, "Oh yeah, Long Beach State dirtbag." And then he's like, "Do you know that, I told our scouting director, wherever I went, especially with the Angels, that, you could have the first, second, third, fourth, fifth round, but I want a Long Beach State guy somewhere mixed in." Because the Long Beach State guys, they play baseball. Orange County, there's the baseball scene in Orange County so significantly popular and so competitive that I want a Long Beach State guy on my team and in my system every year. So I guess something about Long Beach.
It's a great place to grow up, and guys, it might get a bad rap because it's the beach, and I grew up in Seal Beach, which is right next door to Long Beach, and I went to Los Alamitos High School, which they have a pretty darn good football program now. But the Long Beach guys, man, we get after it. And one of my and the Orange County players, like I was talking about Aaron Boone earlier. He's from El Dorado High School. He went to high school with Phil Nevin, who's managing the Angels, and his brother Brett Boone. And one of my favorite players in the big leagues right now, and for a long time, has been Nolan Arenado. He's a Orange County guy, born in Newport. I think he went to El Toro High School down in South Orange County. But that guy can play, and you watch him play, and he's a throwback. And ironic thing was when I was at Arizona my junior year, we lost to Long Beach State in the regionals to go to Omaha. They beat us, and I was so dejected because I got a scholarship offer out of high school to go to Long Beach State, but I wanted to go away to school, so I ended up going down to Tucson. And Joe's right. Long Beach has got a long history. Guys play hard, and and guys are tough coming out of there.
Yeah, Orange County, man. And I guess the hot spot, the equivalent to Orange County in the Bay Area there's no equivalent, but if I were to think of a competitive, place in the Bay Area to play baseball, I think it would be either the East Bay. East Bay's got some good baseball, or the Peninsula's got some really good baseball as well. So, but nothing compares to Orange County baseball for sure. And at first base, you were known throughout your career as, an elite defensive player, the Gold Gloves. We see a little bit of them behind you, and usually defense isn't valued at a position at first base compared to what they expect from you offensively. How did defense become something that you got really that you really excelled at in terms of putting in the work and trying to make yourself the best possible defensive first baseman? How did that come about?
Well, there's no secret. It was just a lot of hard work. It was a lot of time. And once again, with my dad, we would go to, when I was in Little League, to the field, and we'd always hit, and he'd throw me BP for hours, and he'd always hit me ground balls, and he'd always throw me balls in the dirt, and I'd worked on picking it. And I might have been blessed a little bit, born with some decent hands from my father, who had great hands in the NFL, but just hard work. I worked at it. I took ground balls every day, and I was real lucky that I was coming up during a time when the position was evolving. It wasn't the big, fat, slow guy that could just bang the ball over the field and couldn't feel his position. When I came up, guys that I looked up to, Wally Joyner with the Angels was and these left-handed guys, Will Clark, Mark Grace, all these guys were good fielders, good hitters, not necessarily big power guys, but could drive in runs. And when I got into college and then into the minor leagues, coaches told me that you can make it. You save a lot of butts over there at first base from your infielders, bad throws, and turning 3-6-3 double plays, picking balls in the dirt, being able to do relays and cutoffs and bunt plays, and then offensively, just get your hits, drive in runs, hit a home run every now and then. Hit that ball in the gap and hit for a little bit of average. So I was lucky that when I came up, the position was evolving, and guys like Rafael Palmeiro and all those left-handed guys, I really watched them and studied them. So Wally Joyner was probably my favorite growing up, because I grew up an Angel fan and watched him in '86. I was my senior year in high school, and all those guys just could pick it, handle their position defensively, and could hit a little bit. So but it's hard work, it's put in the time, it's fielding ground balls, and knowing that your infielders trust you. And I used to just tell them just to get it close to first base, so let me make the play. I got the biggest glove on the team, just make a play and throw it and get it close to me, and I'll do the rest with footwork and stretching and that. So yeah, I was pretty lucky. And I love watching guys nowadays play the position. There's a few guys in the big leagues that are really good, and they're fun to watch. And when someone's really good over there, you don't really notice it, right? It makes everybody else look better. But when you have a guy over there that's not really that good, you kind of stick out. So I love watching guys play first base that are smooth around the bag. And yeah, it's a fun position if you put your mind and your heart and your soul into it and want to get better.
And we hear on the broadcast every night still those 3-6-3 double plays. Kruko would say, you know who would turn those better than anybody, partner? And he would go, JT Snow. So
it helps being left-handed. It helps being left-handed also. I'm partial to the left-handed first baseman. Fielding bunts, getting that throw on the way to second base. Your glove is on your right hand, so we don't have to turn. We could just make it look smooth. So yeah, I enjoy playing. I had fun. And one of the things I always tried to do, and I tell kids, is you got to separate your offense from the defense. And whether you strike out or hit a home run, leave that bat in the dugout and grab your glove. And now you owe it to the pitcher and you owe it to your infielders to be committed out there, to be in tune with what's going on, and to give a great effort on defense, because you can control your defense. I can control being ready for a ball hit to me. I can control anticipating. I can control where I play defensively based on what pitch is coming. I'm watching the catcher signs. Offense, we're at the mercy of the pitcher. We gotta react to what the pitcher throws us. So defense is something you can control, and you should always be out there mentally into it and in tune, and never be surprised.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And so anyway, traded to the Giants. They opened you spend a few years there, then they opened the new ballpark, and great ballpark. And you might have had the first big moment at that new ballpark in 2000 when you hit the 3-run pinch hit homer against the Mets in the division series. And I had Sean Estes on the show, and he told me how stupid he was for his reckless base running that forced him to listen to the crowd from the training room when that moment happened. So did you feel like you guys had that game in the bag? Because you guys lost that game, and it's weird because whenever we hear that moment in Giants lore, and it's still brought up to this day, we don't really associate a loss with it. So, I mean, how big was that moment? Because that might have been the first big one at that new ballpark in the first year.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And I run into people to this day that say that's the loudest they've ever heard that ballpark. The great Ted Robinson was on the call, and I've done some work with Ted at the Pac-12 network, and he always talks about it. Most people don't realize that tied up the game. It was a 3-run pinch hit. I didn't start that game. I think the Mets were pitching Al Leiter, so I got the game off because against a tough lefty. But I was down in the batting cages with our backup catcher Doug Mirabelli at the time, and we were actually playing home run derby in the cage. We were hitting off the machine, and we were working on our launch angle. We were working on hitting the ball to the corner of the net. And then Ron Wotus came down and said, hey, if Ramon Martinez gets up, he's due up 5th this inning, you got him. So I said, okay. So I took a few more swings with Doug. And when I left, he's like, go get him. And then, I worked a good count off Benitez. I think it was 2-0. And then once again, I was sitting fastball in, down and in. And I said, I wasn't trying to hit a home run. I was just trying to drive the ball. And he left it down and in, which was my sweet spot. And my launch angle was good. I guess my exit velocity was good. And I actually crushed that thing. And I think it went one row because the wind was blowing in and across from center field to right field and in through those archways. And when I hit it, I thought it was going to be a splash hit. I was just hoping it would be fair. And then it ends up going in the first row. We tied the game, and then the Mets came right back in the 10th and scored in the top of the 10th a run, and they ended up beating us. And it was awful quiet. We thought we had them when I came around in the dugout, and we had to get on a plane that night, fly to New York, and then I think Bobby Jones threw a 1-hitter against us, and the series was over. So it happened really fast, and it was a good moment. I wish, obviously, we could have won that game. It felt like we were going to win, but it didn't happen.
There's a few years there where it didn't happen, and I know that you have a ring from 2010, 2014, 2012 as a special assistant with the team. Is there still? I mean, I'm sure there's still something missing when you think back to those early 2000 teams with, 2002, even 2003. I mean, how much do you still think about those teams and the opportunities that you guys had?
A lot. I think going back to 97 when it was a bunch of new guys, it was myself and Jeff Kent and Billy Miller, Rich Aurelia, Jose Vizcaino, Daryl Hamilton in center field. And we won the West that year, that epic series against the Dodgers. And then we kind of got hosed in the format of the playoffs was 2 out of 3, but we had to go to Miami, play the Marlins. They hosted the first 2 games. And then we would go back home for 3 if necessary. And we ended up losing the first 2 in Miami, come home and they beat us. So I think the scheduling got it wrong because they were the wild card and we were the better team, but we had to go to their place we should have been hosting for 2. And then you've seen it. Now it's 2. It was 2-2-1. Back then it was 2 there and 3 at home. So bad scheduling by the Major League Baseball department. 2000, we thought we had a shot. We had a really good team. The Mets got us. Once again in 2002, I really thought I was out in the field in Anaheim Stadium, and here's a team that I played for, the Angels. I was sitting there going, we got 7 outs to go. We're going to be the first team ever in San Francisco to get a ring, and then things unraveled. Spezio home run, the Erstad home run the next inning, and then 2003, I thought we had a good chance at playing against the Marlins again. So didn't work out, but I think we started something special, with the new ballpark in 2000 that kind of launched the Giants, because the Giants were not very good for a lot of years there, 94, 5, 6, and then we kind of picked it up and kind of led the way for the teams that won it. So I think about it a lot. I think about the 2002 series a lot, and I wish that I had the ring from playing, and we would have been the first team in San Francisco. It didn't work out. That's the way sports go, but they've had a lot of success since then.
So this next part, you probably get asked this a ton, and I'm not going to ask you to dig into the story because we all know it. We all know what happened. But how often do you get asked about the Darren Baker play and picking up Darren Baker at the plate in 2002? How often does that come up?
Yeah, a lot. People, it's just something that you've never seen before and that you never will see. And I mean, Darren was 3 years old, and Dusty let a lot of the kids in the dugout during the games. And he was actually arguing with the head bat boy because his favorite player was Kenny Lofton. So the head bat boy said, "No, you're not going out there." I was on third, and David Bell was on second. And I guess when Kenny hit the ball, Darren just shot out and didn't listen to the head bat boy. And I saw him come out of the dugout because I was tagging up. The ball was deep right field. David Bell was halfway. And I saw the whole thing develop. I saw Darren going, and the bat was in the left-handed batter's box. I knew exactly what he was doing. Benji Molina's catching. Mike Riley was the home plate umpire. And all I could hear was like, "Get him out of the way," because there might have been a play behind me. David Bell was right behind me. So luckily I got his jacket and I hit home plate, kicked the bat out of the way and lifted him up. And it's something that you've never seen before, and you never will see it again because the rules have changed. But I get asked about it a lot. And it's just anybody in my situation would have probably done the same thing. So luckily I got a good grab on his jacket. And the ironic thing is I have a picture of my office and with the background, and nobody saw it happen because everybody was looking at David Bell come in. They were looking at the ball fall in. So even Dusty, no one knew what happened until they saw the replay on TV or the news that night. So it was pretty funny.
How often do you talk to Darren? Do you still keep in touch with him?
I don't. I did some work for the Pac-12 network. I did some broadcasting for about 7 years. When he was at Cal, I did some of their games and saw Dusty in the stand. So I actually did an interview with Darren about that, and he doesn't remember it at all. Which is, he was 3 years old. We probably, none of us remember what we were doing at 3 years old, but he's he's into pro ball now. I think he's with the Washington Nationals in the minor leagues, and he's a pretty good player. So he's got a chance as a second baseman, but it was fun to reminisce about it and bring it up. But yeah, he doesn't remember it at all. Never remembers running out there. Pretty funny.
Yeah, no, it was hilarious. I always see the clips of it and I always laugh. A few more things here. I mean, you finish off in Boston, and then in 2008, you signed this contract with the Giants, and you not only get to retire with the organization, but you get added on the 40-man roster. And the teams won't do this, I don't think, ever again. They wouldn't, for whatever reason. And you get penciled into the starting lineup. You get some money out of it. It's great. How did that even happen? Like we've seen before where, they take they put on the uniform and you go out to the position. But the 40-man roster, you get added. How did all of this even come about?
Well, it was Brian Sabian's idea, and Brian and I go way back. He was the director of the minor leagues with the Yankees. Him and Brian Cashman, who's now the GM for the Yankees, ran the minor leagues when I was with the Yankees in the minor leagues. So he traded me away to the Angels, and then he traded back for me when he got the Giants GM job in '97. I think part of it too was my last year with the Giants. Not many people know this. In '05, I was trying to re-sign with them. I was 38 at the time, and I wanted to try and play till I was 40, and wanted to come back to the Giants as a left-handed bench player or whatever. And the talks didn't really go down as I felt they should have. And the Giants waited, I think, till the last day and a half hour before the deadline. Then they called me and said, "We're not bringing you back." And I wasn't happy. My agent wasn't happy. I thought that they'd handled it the wrong way. Peter McGowan, Larry Bear, and Saban all trying to call me. I didn't answer any of their calls for a few days because I wasn't happy. I'd spent 9 years there and thought I deserved a little more respect than that. I didn't care which direction they were going, and just because now I couldn't probably get a job with the team. Boston ended up coming in because of Terry Francona. But anyways, that went down. I wasn't too pleased with the way things happened. And then when I retired with the Red Sox, Brian Sabian came back to me and said, "We want you to retire as a Giant." I think part of that was because of the way it had ended. And I told him I didn't want to do it. I said, I don't want to do it. You don't have to do it. He said, "No, we're doing it. You're coming back. You're going to be in uniform. You're going to take the field." I said, I'm not one about the spotlight or extra pats on the back. I told him, no, I didn't want to do it. And then he said, "Think about it," and called me a day later. I said, "I still don't want to do it." He said, "Well, we're doing it. We're already making." So I said, "Okay, I guess I got to do it." But it was kind of cool. I ran out there, got to take the field, and I got 1 day of pay. It was a couple $1,000, and the infielders at the time were throwing me balls in the dirt, and luckily I was picking them. Then they came out and replaced me. I forget who was on the team at the time, maybe Ryan Klesko or somebody else, but that was kind of cool. And then I did some work for him after I was done, some roving and some coaching, special assistant stuff, did some broadcasting. So still live up here in the Bay Area, and that's how that all came about. But I didn't want to do it. I told Brian Sabian, but we go back a long time. I really respect Brian. He did a lot for me in my career, and so that's how that happened.
Yeah, and wrapping up here, you called a few games a few years back, and I know you mentioned about the Pac-12 work that you've done. And I think with the River Cats, maybe you filled in for a few games there. So is broadcasting still something you want to do? Maybe some coaching mixed in? Is that still something that you're interested in doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty open. I really enjoyed the broadcasting. I did 3 games last year, not this past year, but 2021 during the COVID, filled in for 3 games. And I did some after I retired, and they just threw me into the booth. I was raw. I didn't know what I was doing, and wasn't very good at it. But I worked for the Pac-12 network for 7 years, got really a lot of experience, worked with some great guys, Ted Robinson, JD Long, who does the Rams radio now. He's bunch of good guys. And then did the games last year for the Giants, and thought I was going to get some games this year. I talked to some of the people in the organization, and they thought I was going to maybe get some games this year. It didn't happen. It's tough as you get older. There's new guys up and coming, but it's still something I love to do. I got some great feedback last year when I did the games. I think people enjoyed having a hitter in the booth. The Giants are very heavy pitching wise with their color commentary guys. And I think it was refreshing to have a hitter's point of view in the booth. So hopefully something happens. Coaching is still a possibility. I'd love to be maybe a first base coach or an infield instructor on a big league team. I've got a bunch of buddies that are managing in the big leagues now, and I keep checking in with them and say, "Hey, if you got an opening," I'm an empty nester now with kids. They're all out of the house. It's just my wife and I. So we're game for picking up and getting back into baseball somehow, either broadcasting or coaching. So hopefully something works out, keep all my doors open and avenues open. And I love the game. I love baseball. I think it's still the best sport out there, and it's it's every day, right? I didn't realize how many people's lives revolve around baseball. At 7 o'clock at night, you turn on the game. Who are we playing? If we're on the road or at home, and it's a big part of people's lives, the baseball season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. JT, this was great, man. I appreciate you coming on
Yeah,
the show. And we probably went a little bit over, but I mean, we could do, if you want to do a separate episode on continuing to talk about analytics, because I know that's a field that you love. We could.
It's got its place, but it also has some. I think that players would benefit from not so much information sometimes. Like,
I'm right there with you.
Like the iPads in the dugout after an at-bat, guys would go, their nose is right at, like, what, like we never had that. It's like, what are you looking at? You just, I mean, it's too much information is not, still got to be an athlete. You still got to go out and you still got to react. You still got to believe in yourself and trust yourself. And too much information can clog up our brain and not make us the player and the athlete that we can be. So.
And the worst one is when a utility guy pinch hits for someone and the pitching coach comes out to the mound as if the pitcher doesn't know how to attack this guy hitting 210 with no power, So it's,
there's just we could do it a separate talk. There's just a lot of things in baseball now. It's just, the runner on second base in extra innings. I'm like, what is it? Is this like a little league, like tournament on the weekend where the sun's going down and it's just
there's a game after. They have to get the game after in.
Yeah, exactly. And I was broadcasting a game last year, and it was the Giants and the Angels, and I never realized that it was about where the lineup was with the guy on second base. I remember the Giants had the bottom of their lineup of 7, 8, 9, so they're trying to bunt the guy over. Then the Angels would come up, and they're at a different part of their order. They had like 3, 4, and 5 coming up, so they're just slugging. And then the guys with the card in their back pocket looking to where. Now the headset with the pitcher and the catcher, and there's just a lot of things. Some of the rule changes next year I think are going to be great. I'm all for putting 2 guys on each side of the diamond. I think one of the things you're going to see is shortstops and second basemen start making some great plays again because you're going to have to range.
Yeah,
you don't see that nowadays. You don't see diving plays because there's 3 guys on one side of the infield. The ball's hit over there, no one dives. You're going to see some great Gold Glove plays next year at second base, short, third, because guys are going to have to range and cover some ground. And I never felt like you should be told where to play your defense. I think you should be able to play them wherever you want. But it's kind of gone to the extreme. It kind of takes the fun out of watching guys make great plays, and I think you're going to see that next year. I think the pitch clock is great. I think the batter, not leaving the batter's box or whatever is. I mean, I watched Barry Bonds for 9 years. Barry Bonds never left the batter's box. He got in there and he's like, let's go. Let's play some hardball. That's the way he did. Now guys are stepping out, fixing their gloves, fix their helmet. They've got 8 pieces of protective gear on them. And so anyways, it's all good.
Yeah. I can't wait for those upcoming discussions for sure. JT, thank you. I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. And of course, you guys could follow him on Twitter. He's not very active on Twitter, though. His Twitter is.
No, I'm not a big Twitter guy. I don't really care what people think. I don't really care.
Good for you. Yeah.
Save it. Yeah, I've kind of held my ground. And I guess I don't want people to find me. I guess that's kind of gone sideways. So no one really cares what I think anyway. So who cares?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I like that. Save it. I'm going to use that. Yeah. Save it. So, but anyways, if you just want to look at his profile, then it's at JT Snow 6. If you want to just stare at an empty profile, go ahead and do that. And of course, follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at RizzoCast. You can follow us we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. So go check us out as well. Thank you guys for listening and see you next time.